Hello. What I'm going to show you today is that you don't actually need to process that much if you get the image right on the back of the camera. Process a couple of images from the recent morning down at Hengistbury Head. Images were very minimalist, but you should be able to see that if you get it right on the back of the camera, it makes it a lot easier when you're post-processing that later. So swap over to I'll swap over to the computer now and talk you through what I'm going to do with the processing. So we've got a couple of images here. These were the two images that were featured in the video from Hengistbury Head. There'll be a link up here for that, so you can see what the conditions were like when I was taking these pictures. So if we click on this first one, click on D to go into the develop module, you'll see this is just a raw image. So this flat colours are desaturated, but it's just trying to capture all of the information within the histogram. And if you see at the top here, I've done a pretty decent job, if I say so myself, of capturing all of that data within the histogram. If I click on the show the shadow clipping, it would just show you that there's just a little bit of clipping right down there in the shadows of the rocks. I'm not bothered about that. So that's the starting point. So when I'm processing this image, first thing I'll ever do is go into the lens corrections. So I want to apply both of those, and that should bring up the profiles for the camera and the lens that I used, and that should straighten the horizons, get rid of vignetting, and give you a nice base to work from. So if we get rid of that now, the next thing I want to do is straighten the horizon. You can't straighten the horizon until you've applied those lens corrections, because if you do it the other way round, it'll be all over the place, so don't do it. So if I press R, that'll go into the crop tool, and you'll see that the horizon is a little bit up on the right, or if you can't see that, trust me, it is. So I always, with a seascape, the horizon should be level. If I ever see an image with a wonky horizon, then as many people will tell you, I will quite quickly point it out, it somehow affects my viewing of the image. So there we are, that's the image, and if you press the control key, it will bring up the little ruler key. So if I put that on the line there and just click and drag to the other side of the image so that the line is on the horizon, and then let go, that should straighten it out, which it has, and that's nice. Okay, next thing I want to do is add a bit of contrast to the image. Now I could do the shadows, highlights, add the contrast at the top there, or I could just go into the tone curve, and this is something that I put in my normal import preset so that it applies to all images, so it saves a big job, but because I'm doing this for the video, I haven't got this applied. So I've got one that I've saved earlier, which is like the R5 standard, so this is one that I made. So as you can see, we've got an S curve here, and what this is doing, because the curve's steeper, it's just adding a bit of contrast to the light shadows and raising up the medium highlights. So that is giving the image a bit more punch already. Another thing that I will do most of the time is take out a bit of clarity, and also take out on the dehaze side of things, just to soften the image. You can go wild with this, and you will have seen images like this on Instagram. They hurt my eyes, you know, going wild with the clarity and the dehaze. Add some saturation, it's horrific, so don't do it. So I normally start with -5 on each of those, and you know, we're still in there on the histogram, so add a bit of contrast, but I probably want to bring down the brightness of this sky. So if I do that with a graduated filter, click on that, click somewhere on the horizon here, but if I press the shift key and click and drag, it should just darken that sky down. As you can see over here, I'm just taking it down a third of a stop. I might take that down a little bit more. No, I think the third's about right. Okay. Next thing that I want to do with this image is, you know, the darks of these shadows are really quite dark. So I want to bring those up just to lighten that, give a bit of detail in those. I'll probably take that up to around the 30 mark. That's bringing out some detail there quite nicely. Next thing that I want to do, because we got you know, quite a lot of detail in this foreground, I feel that it's kind of overpowering the image. So I want to take some of the focus away from that. The way I'll do that is with another graduated filter, but coming up from the bottom of the image. Probably take that down. Again, press shift and drag upwards, and that will just darken the exposure down at the front of the image and kind of push you through the image towards the light. If you've seen other images or other videos that I've done, that, you know, your eye is generally always drawn to the light. So I want to bring the viewer through this image to the end of the groin, and if you view it hard, you know, large enough, you'll be able to see the Isle of Wight in the background of the needles. So darkening that first part of the image, that does that for me. As I've taken the exposure down on that, I might bring in some of the whites as well, just to give a little bit of detail there. So it's going to darken the overall exposure but bring up some of the highlights, so the whites will be at the same sort of level that they were before, but the rest of it will be darker. So that's, you know, that's looking much better now. Because it's a raw image, a lot of the colours are desaturated, so what I want to do is bring those back in. So rather than using the saturation slider, which, you know, can get a bit leery, if I use the vibrant slider, that will do a much cleaner job. So that's looking lovely now. Okay. Overall on this image, it's looking a little bit on the blue side, so I might just warm it up slightly, just up to 6050 as far as the white balance is concerned on the Kelvin scale. That just gives the yellows a bit more because there's an overall there's a large amount of blue in there and purple in there, so it's still got a good amount of contrast. And I think that's it as far as the overall exposure. I would then just look at distractions. Right, for me, you know, the main part of the image here, great, but this upsets me down here. So you can use the spot removal tool. Sometimes it doesn't do a fantastic job, and I quite often take images through into Photoshop to do that, but I'll give it a go using this. So click on that. We can see we've got the circle there. We can increase the size of the circle for, with the mouse scroll wheel, and if I just click on this area here, it should select another part of the image to heal that part with. So it's done that, it's selected this bit here, and it's actually done a very nice job of getting rid of that little distraction. I think that's very nice. So if I just zoom right in, and we just get into some of the nitty-gritty detail on it. As you can see, we've got the Isle of Wight and the needles and the lighthouse up there. I just saw something else that was bothering me. Right, okay, these three little dots there. So if I go into the spot removal tool, if I just make this circle nice and small, and just click on each one of those and it should just zap them out. Make sure there's no other ones there. Doesn't appear to be. Okay, and that is done. Okay, if we go to the next image, it's the pure minimalist scene, just the single groin marker with a very wonky horizon, but we'll sort that out, no problem at all. So again, we'll go into lens corrections, tick both of those boxes, forget about that, that's done. Next job is to straighten this horizon, so you can either click on the crop overlay tool up there or just press R on the keyboard and that brings this crop overlay. So you can either click and drag and make it level. Unfortunately there isn't a zoom in tool that I've found on this. If someone else has found a zoom in tool while you're trying to do this, please write below. I've yet to find it. So you can do it like that, or as I explained on the previous image, if you press Control, click on the horizon on the left hand side of the image, drag that line across to the right hand side and then let go and that will level it. If we zoom in and check, you should be able to see that that's level now. Ooh, pretty close. This is near as damn it. Right, so again, next job, I'll put my standard tone curve in there. Again, that's adding a bit of punch. As you can see, the histogram, very little by the way of darks, and because I exposed it at the time to the right of the image, you might want to bring this exposure down and it will just bring in some of the colour that I was seeing at the time. Okay. Right, so next thing that I want to do with this image, to me this foreground's slightly too light, so I want to darken this down. So click on the graduated filter tool, press shift, drag up, and that's just dropping that exposure in that foreground by 0.4 of a stop, which is probably enough on that. Right, next thing, I'll do my dehaze and clarity minus adjustments, and I want to just lighten this center part of the image. So I'll do that with the radial filter. Click and drag. Okay, that's nice. All I've done there is with the exposure, bring that up 0.3 of a stop. Again, add some vibrance, and in this case a little bit of saturation, just to give a nice peaceful colour palette for that scene. Just experiment a little bit with the white balance, maybe even do no, yeah, I think it probably works better down at 5500, which is what I shot it at. So that is almost done, but this little rock over here annoys me. It's kind of distracting away from the groin marker. So if I zoom in on it, you'll be able to see, and let's use the spot removal tool just to zap that out. So if I just wipe over that, that should have got rid of that quite nicely. Okay, now just want to check one last thing. Right, because I'm trying for symmetry here, this groin marker has to be bang center of the image. If it isn't, then you know it's losing. So you can see here, if that's the center line of the image, it's just off to the right. So I can't drag it over, so what I'll need to do is just change the crop slightly so that center line is on the center post. And that is done. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.